Here's a quick overview of what's new in RevaTrademark version 6. A common request we received from our clients in the U.S. was to add a function to query the USPTO database to see if the prosecution status of a trademark has changed. If you're familiar with a program called Feathers, it's the same basic idea. We created that functionality here on the USPTO status check page. To track the progress of a trademark, go to the Owner and Dates page and select this checkbox. To stop tracking that trademark once it's registered, you can deselect the checkbox. Once you've selected which trademarks to track, you can run a daily status check by going to this page and clicking this button. If the status of a mark has changed since the last time you checked, a record will appear in this grid. Since this is an entirely new section of the program, it would be a good idea to watch the tutorial called USPTO Status Checks to get a full demonstration. In version 5, you could choose from different columns for the list views by checking and unchecking the column names up here. Well, as we discovered by talking to different clients, pretty much every attorney has a different opinion about which columns need to be visible in these lists. So in version 6, you can customize these grids to your heart's content. You can click this button and add columns to the grid by dragging them from here to here. You can remove columns by dragging them off the grid. You can rearrange the columns by dragging and dropping. And you can resize the columns by dragging the column headers. If for any reason you ever want to reset the layout of the grid back to the factory default, so to speak, then right-click the grid and choose this option. When you print a report from a list, the columns that appear to the left of this marker are the columns that will show up on the report. Which means on the alerts report, for example, you can choose whatever columns are most appropriate for your practice. We applied the same logic to the report section of the system. The standard reports still have a fixed layout. But for the list reports, you can choose exactly the columns you want and arrange them in any order you want by dragging and dropping. You can also sort your data by clicking the column headers. Working directly with the grid to customize the list replaces the old way of choosing and sorting columns that we used in version 5. In that version, you used this part of the screen to choose your columns for both the printed reports and for exporting to Word or Excel. To choose which columns to export to Word or Excel in version 6, you work directly with the grid, which is much more intuitive because what you see here in the grid is exactly what you'll get when you export the records. Another option you can choose for the list reports is to print the records in a group with a group header. To do that, drag the column you want to use for the grouping and drop it up here. As you can see, the grid is now divided into groups, and the report will have the same grouping. If you find that you end up creating the same combinations of filters over and over for your reports, you'll be glad to know that in version 6 you can save your settings here as a stored filter. To create a new filter name, click this hyperlink and enter the filter name in the pop-up form. Then select the filter name and click this button to save your current filter settings as a stored filter with this name. After you've created the stored filters you need, you can apply them to your reports by just selecting them from the drop-down list. As you can see, the report section of RevaTrademark has been changed quite a bit since version 5, so even if you've worked with reports before, it would be a good idea to watch the full tutorial. One of the most common requests we've received from our clients is to allow an action to appear in the list of upcoming alerts. To mark an action as an alert date, set the date of the action in the future and check this box. When this action is coming due, it will appear on the alert screen, and it will end up in the alerts report if you print it. While we were looking at the Actions section, you may have noticed these new buttons. By clicking these, you can give yourself a fuller view of the Actions grid by expanding it down the screen, or a fuller view of the Contacts grid by expanding it up the screen. In the Preferences section, you set your date templates pretty much the same as in version 5, but there are a couple of changes. To work with the master date template, you choose this option. But to copy dates to a jurisdiction, now you choose this option. You choose this option to edit the jurisdiction dates and this option to reorder the dates, which is the same as in version 5, but we've made it easier to move the dates up and down in a long list. You can still use the up and down arrows like before, but if you need to move a date more than a few places in the list, you'll be glad to know that in version 6 you can select the date, then drag it and drop it. To move a date to the bottom, drop it just beyond the end of the list. You can also move a block of dates by selecting them and dragging any one of them to the new position. In version 5, when you merged your patent or trademark records into Outlook, you ended up with standard subject lines like this, or like this for the email alerts. In version 6, you can create your own custom subject lines. When you set up the email merges, you can create the subject line using a combination of text and fields from the database, just like you do for the body of the email. When the emails are generated, the data is merged in both the email itself and in the subject line. We've also made it easier to add a graphic when you merge into Microsoft Word or Outlook. Although graphics can't be added directly to a dataset for merging, you can copy a trademark or patent graphic by right-clicking and choosing Copy. Then you can simply paste it into your letter or into an email. We've made some significant changes in version 6 that are specific to trademarks. Several clients told us they end up giving their trademarks names like ABCD standard characters and ABCD design to distinguish the type. That works, but it means you can't go to a list view and just search for ABCD. So in version 6, we added this field. Now you can type the trademark name here and designate a trademark type by choosing from this drop-down list. Which means in your list view, ABCD is just ABCD. The treaty filings page for trademarks works pretty much like it did before, but with one important difference. In version 5, you could only choose one trademark as the basis for a treaty filing. In version 6, you can base a treaty filing on more than one trademark. You start the process by creating a treaty filing just like you did before, but after selecting a trademark as the basis, you can select another basis mark by clicking this option, finding the second trademark in the list over here, and then clicking this button. And that's the quick overview of what's new in RevaTrademark version 6.